Hello and welcome to today's presentation, StarWind Cloud VTL for AWS and Veeam, redefining tape backup for the cloud era. Today's presentation is being brought to you by StarWind. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today's presentation. Joining us for today is Dustin Albertson, Senior Cloud Solutions Architect, Global Cloud Group, Veeam, and Max Kolomasiv, Director of Product Management, StarWind. Max, welcome and thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours. You can take it away.
Thanks, Pat. Hello, everyone. And just wanted a few words about what we will be discussing today. First, we'll have a few words about tape history, where it started, where it is now, and we'll talk about the evolution, what were the major changes in tape architecture and in tape backup. And then we'll talk a little bit about what is killing tapes, both physical tapes and tapes as a way to store backup data. Then we'll talk about some interesting hidden figures of tape backup strategy. And finally, we'll go into the topic of redefining tape for the cloud era and see how tape backup can be made better. And we'll end up with a small questions and answers session. We provide the information about our companies and how you can reach us to ask your questions regarding our products or tape backup in general. So this year we have the 65th anniversary of tape, and it's one of the longest lasting storage medias. And Dustin, can you tell us a bit more about the first tapes? I know you explored this topic a lot, and there should definitely be a story behind it.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Yeah, so as you said, tapes have been around for 65 years. I mean, IBM created the first one. It was a 1.4 megabyte disk or tape, and it's on a roll that was 720 meters long. So, I mean, you can imagine trying to compare that to what's out there now. But, you know, like you said, it's come a long way. But it's still at its core, it's still the kind of same technology. It's still a magnetic tape disk, and it's a one that really hasn't had that much disruption in the industry. Would you agree with that, Max?
So yeah, over time, I know tapes evolved dramatically, but the evolution was not really disruptive innovation based. It was only capacity. Sometimes it was something in addition to that, but as we see here, there hasn't been a lot of dramatic change to the tape. The tapes became denser. What are the other things happened to tape over time, over the last 65 years?
I agree with you. I mean, there's been a lot of formats, but it seems like we've kind of settled down on the LTO format. But, you know, I still remember DLT tapes and DTO tapes. And the only difference, you know, between the formats other than the format and having to buy new hardware would be just space. I mean, there's no, you know, real major technology upgrade in tape. It's just tapes are getting bigger, allowing more data to be written to them. But, you know, that still the pitfalls are still there that they were, you know, with the original tapes. So, you know, if we go to the next slide, we can discuss what are some of those pitfalls that are around still for tapes.
Yeah, definitely. And with all these pitfalls, tape still remains one of the biggest players in the backup storage market. So let's discuss what things kill tape but don't actually kill it as a backup media.
Yeah. So, you know, again, heavy usage on a tape, you still have deformation that can occur. I mean, think about, back when when I was in high school, or back, well, I'll just say back in the day, which was a Wednesday. Remember cassette tapes, and you remember how they used to just come out, and you'd have to stick a pencil or a pen in there and twist them back up. I mean, it's still the same kind of idea, is that these tapes just get used, and it deformates, and it actually expands and it can come off the reel. So, I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does affect the tape's usage. And on top of that, I mean, dirt. It's taking these tapes out, putting them into boxes, sending them off site. Moving them around a lot, making sure they're somewhere else. I mean, if it's not clean, there's dirt that's going to get down in there and can affect the reading of that data. So, I mean, there's things in line with that. All the tape libraries and tape drives have cleaning tapes. So, I mean, that's another thing that you have to be aware of, that you have to do.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I remember for one of our customers having cleaning tapes for all the generations they had in their vault was a big problem, because at some point they just couldn't buy what it was, I think LTO 3 cleaning cartridges. There was something specific for that particular type. I'm not sure why, but yeah, that's definitely something which doesn't make it a very comfortable way of long-term archival. And I know that there are also some hidden figures in the DR strategy associated with tape. So something where people typically think that, yeah, we'll just use tape, but then they miss some things which are coming together in pretty big amounts of money.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, there's hard cost and soft cost, and a lot of times people don't, annotate or put in their cost. So, I mean, the staff cost alone needed to manage a tape library. If you're talking about any tape library of size, and rotating those tapes and reclaiming the capacity on those tapes, someone has to monitor those jobs and reset them and pull the tapes out and send them off site. So, I mean, there's a lot of costs associated with that people don't typically think about. So, especially the legacy hardware, like you said, previous LTO types, or even if they have other formats, I mean, they still got to have those tape drives that can read that, and something that can read that data off of those tapes. So, the off-site vaulting is one that people typically don't think about until they need to send it off-site. Do you happen to have a way? Can you show us, like a architecture that kind of makes it a clearer picture?
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to go a bit deeper into the DR path and recovery path with physical tape. And as you mentioned, storing lots of tapes and old drives and old SCSI controllers to connect those drives and read those tapes is a big pain, especially for companies, say in the medical industry. They have to keep the data for their patient's lifetime. So they probably have at least 3 generations, or maybe even more as of now. And this number will only increase. So with vaulting physical tapes, there is definitely some specific procedure. First of all, you need to find someone who will archive the tapes for you. There has to be a secure storage with fire protection, certain humidity, certain degree of thickness. It may be just a storage container if people just have something like a waterproof and dustproof boxes, but still there is a big process associated with that, and that process is all manual. So you have to unload the tape, you have to put it somewhere, and even if all of that is clean, it still involves one part which may fail from time to time, and that is human. So as long as we have people who need to physically move these tapes around and put them in other locations, this process is prone to small degree of failure. It's really small, but still, it can be minimized. And also, when we restore the data, it's also associated with physically moving the tape from the vault, calling the company, getting that specific tape, making sure the barcode is there, the information is there, the tape is readable. It's the tape you can technically read, so you don't have to transport the tape with the tape drive and specific hardware to connect that to the existing infrastructure. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of pains in the physical backup world.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of, yeah, I'm sorry about that. There seems to be a lot of human involvement in that as well, and the more human touch you have into it, the more risk, the more chances there are for an issue. So, you know, how can StarWind VTL, you know, make this process better? If we're looking at this right here, you know, do you have a way to improve that?
Yes. So StarWind previously used traditional virtual tape library. So we offered a way to replace physical tape with disk-based storage, which emulated tape. But just a month ago at Veeam in New Orleans, we announced a new product, which is StarWind Cloud VTL, specifically designed for AWS and Veeam. And the idea is not only to replace physical type libraries and do it in a way that customer does not have to redesign and redo his entire tape-centric backup infrastructure, but also provide a fully automated replication and tiering to Amazon Cloud Storage. So now the whole backup process is completely automated and doesn't involve physically moving tapes or even clicking anything to move the data between on-premise and the cloud.
That's pretty cool. So you say that if I look at this architecture, it looks like it replicates to S3, and I'm assuming that's because it's faster and allows you to get the data there a little bit quickly or more efficiently. And then you say it tiers down to Glacier for, you know, the low cost.
So yes, and there are actually more options than just moving it to the cloud and then tiering. So if we look at the next slide, we have several options for treating our tapes. So each tape job can have specific parameters. So first of all, as soon as backup job is finished, we can either start the cloud replication job immediately, or we keep the local copy for, let's say, a day or two, and then we replicate it to S3, or we just keep the local copy indefinitely. Then, when we have finished the replication, we can either get rid of the local copy immediately to save local space and have it available for the new tape, or we can keep it for a certain amount of days before deleting, or we can keep it indefinitely and just never delete it from the local storage. And finally, when tape is already in S3, we either move it to Glacier immediately, or we keep it in S3, let's say for a week before destaging to Glacier, or we just never destage it to Glacier to make sure that we have a quick restore option in the cloud without actually resorting to just Glacier. Because Glacier is a good way to store data, but if you want to recover the data, it is not the fastest way to go.
Yeah, it's going to be used more for the low cost, and if you know a tape is not going to be used a lot or for a while, and you want to keep it somewhere for X amount of years, then that's probably your best bet is to put it there. What are some of the reasons that you think people should rethink about tapes?
Oh, so there are actually multiple. I've put together a list. I typically try to come down to three main reasons to rethink the existing tape-centric backup strategy, but here I couldn't go with less than 7 reasons to rethink tape backup. So first of all, tape backup jobs with VTL become very fast because there is disk behind, not tape, and they can also be parallel. So with virtual tape drives, you can have unlimited number of drives and unlimited number of tape jobs running at the same time. So this allows you to fit any tape backup into a small backup window. So you always have good tape backups, even if your production has small backup window. So your backup does not affect the application performance anymore. Then virtual tapes can be sized differently. So you don't have to use a certain, let's say, 6 terabyte tape for the backup job. If you know that your infrastructure only has, let's say, 2 terabytes of changes, and you just need, or to replicate that amount of data, you can size the tapes appropriately and use the space more efficiently. So there is no dead space like you could have it on physical tapes. So there is no writing to one tape multiple times. You can even size the tape down to the individual virtual machine size and have that particular virtual machine replicated to S3 and Glacier to have granular but tape-based backups and restores. Then another thing I mentioned before on the previous slide is the 100% automation. So right now we fulfill the 3-to-1 backup rule without any issues, and the whole process becomes completely automated and transparent. And just to add to that, 3-to-1 zero backup rule means that you have 3 copies of your data on 2 different media, and one of them being offsite, and 0 means you have 0 errors during restore. So all your backups are verified, which is a really important thing because Dustin mentioned previously, there is some chance that when you try to restore from tape, it's mechanical, so there is room for error. With virtual tapes, there is not. It is disk-based, and there is a smaller chance of getting a disk jammed than a tape jammed. Another reason to rethink physical tape backup compared to virtual is the security. Although physical tape is secure, virtual tape has a bit more security to it because we remove the human to backup interaction, and the data is securely tiered to AWS. And even when we move the data to AWS, the backup administrator does not need access to AWS. So this is defined once for StarWind VTL, and then the person handling the backup does not go to AWS, so he may not even have the credentials for the vault. Then another thing which is really important these days, tape backups are naturally ransomware protected because ransomware cannot talk tape, and even if ransomware starts talking tape, the fact that there is a copy in Amazon Glacier makes that attack extremely difficult because it has to get access to AWS bucket somehow, and then it has to get the tape from Amazon Glacier. So even if we theoretically imagine a situation where we have a highly sophisticated ransomware which can fetch the tape backup from Glacier, Glacier's speed becomes an advantage because by the time the tape is actually fetched, one can abandon all current connections to Glacier and secure his data. So the security level is very, very high. Final 2 things are about cost. So these are 2 of the hidden figures which actually save lots of money. First of all, it's lower operating expenditure because you don't spend money on staff who does all the tape management. You don't spend money on all the equipment required to manage and maintain the tape infrastructure. It simply goes away. and you will be surprised to learn how much money it can save. And talking about lower operating expenditure, cloud storage is getting cheaper year over year, and physical storage is not really getting cheaper unless you move it somewhere in the middle of the desert, which increases your recovery time objective and recovery point objective. And finally, virtual tape library format lasts decades, because you can take a 20 or 30-year-old virtual tape, mount it in StarWind VTL, and read that backup. So you don't have to maintain the old equipment and connectivity for the virtual tapes.
And that's an important thing to hit on too, is that the format doesn't change. I mean, there's times in my past life that, we bought a tape library, and within a year that tape format was no longer around, and we had to switch and spend that money to get a different format. And but we still had to keep that other one around and functioning, because we still have those old tapes. And another thing that you mentioned there is the ransomware. That's a big one. Again, the 3210 rule. A lot of people will put their data in a couple of different places, but those places are usually easily accessed by ransomware. So having that on tape, especially a virtual tape, and then having it offsite in S3 or Glacier, helps you protect yourself and your company from ransomware, because it's offline. It's not something actively connected to. So that is pretty big. What can you if you were to break it down, like you said, into three, what are the three main points that you want to kind of get across?
Okay, trying to do it with just three. So three would be, first of all, ease of compliance, because companies who rely on physical tape infrastructures and companies who are required to maintain tape backups can easily replace that legacy tape infrastructure with something which is faster, more secure, and much more flexible than a physical tape backup infrastructure. Then the second big thing is the automation behind it. So you don't have to move physical tapes between on-site and off-site. And even if you offloaded the tape to the cloud, you don't need to do anything except clicking a button, fetch me that cloud from Glacier, to restore your data. So the restore procedures are really easy. Let's say that data is needed for any reason, let's say litigation or recovering patient data. With physical tape, it's a huge headache to get that tape back and read it and get the data to the actual place where it has to be read and used. With virtual tape, this process takes just minutes of administrator's time and zero effort from any of the facilities. And finally, it's scalability. With physical tapes, there is a limit on the number of tapes you can buy. There is a limit on number of tapes you can maintain. And if you need to add an extra tape and you don't have any, you technically have to go and buy it. With cloud storage and tapes being virtual, there is real scalability behind your backup infrastructure. So even though the local storage capacity is disk-based and you may run out of local storage, you can just expand it on the fly. And if we talk about the Vault is really, I'm not sure, we just need to call Amazon and ask how big their storage is. And I would say they're just laughing.
Yeah, I don't think they would tell you.
Yeah. So that's the main three things about virtualizing tape backup and leveraging cloud storage as long-term archival targets.
I like it. And I think those are three, good ones to kind of put across. I've used a lot of different products, a lot of different tapes, and it's the ease of use is my main point. I mean, if you can have all the features in the world, but if it's not easy to use, then no one will use it.
Yeah, good user interface is like a joke. If you have to explain it, it means it's not that good.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, I'll just kind of give my thank you for allowing me to be in here with you guys, and again, if you want to reach out, you can reach out to Veeam on Twitter at Veeam. We'll also have some ways to contact us on the next slide, but thank you, and Max, I know you want to probably give your thanks as well.
Yeah, thank you everyone for watching this recording. And should you have any questions, we do have our Twitter handle here. And if you want to ask us questions, just mention us in your tweets, or just use any other way of communication you like. So we have the website here, we have our emails here, and we have everything from Twitter, LinkedIn, and all the way to Spiceworks and Facebook. So there are all the ways to reach out and tell us about your tape experience, tell us about your tape things, and we'll see what we can offer you to solve these problems. Okay, thanks everyone. Pat, now back to you.
Okay, excellent. At this time, I'd like to thank Max and Dustin for taking the time to join us today, and I'd also like to thank StarWind for making this event possible. And as always, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Have a great rest of your day.